I'd have those moments where I felt disgusted with how I looked. I didn't like how I felt inside. I had very low confidence in myself. Food was always the vice for me, which is how I got to the weight that I was. I suppose the trigger moment for me was actually finding your page, following your page, you then running the first, giveaway. I started losing weight. What makes me feel good is how it makes you feel to go to the gym 4 sessions a week where you train like your life depends on it and you focus and you progress, and the confidence that builds from being consistent. My mum took a picture of me where I was about to go to work at the pub and I was wearing like a black shirt, and my mum took a picture of me standing next to my brother, and I was like, fuck, like I look different, man. Like I look really different. And I think I posted that photo on Instagram and like everyone was like, Jesus Christ, like you look so different. I think my waistline at that point was like 28 inches. It's crazy. And my brother's now 17 and my brother is obsessed with training. Like,
no way.
I obviously don't need to speak to what RNT does because the results are obvious. I feel blessed. I'm in a good place right now, and that gives me some sort of short, medium, long-term happiness, which is good.
Before you came on, I was just giving some background as to like how you were the first ever giveaway winner back in 2017. And then I was just giving some reference to the point that it's been 6 years, almost 6 years since that giveaway, which is pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, it's mad. In some ways it feels like longer, and in some ways it doesn't feel like 6 years. It's weird.
So let's take it back like maybe 6-7 years. Where were you like 6-7 years ago, and what was going on, and what were some of the big problems you were facing?
So yeah, I guess around the time that I discovered your personal Instagram page, and then sort of subsequently RNT Fitness, I was a law student. So I'd graduated from university and I was about to start my legal practice course before I sort of start my training contract. And so I was in between sort of student-y sort of jobs. And I guess from like a training and lifestyle perspective, I just wasn't very happy with where I wasn't very happy with how I looked, how I felt. Didn't really feel like I knew what the correct thing to be doing for me was. I was feeling like I was following a lot of generic stuff or listening to what a lot of other people were saying, and not necessarily feeling like it was making me any happier or any fitter or, sort of mentally well. So that kind of stuff. And then I guess the key thing as well was just like struggling with consistency. So just being one of those people who, whatever I was doing, like I was sticking to it relatively well for like 4/5 days a week, and then kind of falling off the wagon on the weekends, not being able to manage social occasions, not being able to manage, like vices that we all have. So that kind of stuff. So just kind of spinning in circles without really moving forward is probably the best analogy that I could give is in terms of how I felt.
What were some of the vices that you were using, and for what reason?
Well, food was always the vice for me, which is how I got to the weight that I was. And I think whether it was stress or emotional eating or boredom or, just not being able to kind of control myself in social situations around alcohol and food and that kind of stuff, I think food was always a big one for me. And then that was always exacerbated by things like drinking as well. Just obviously everyone knows that your decision making is worse when you drink. Things that you wouldn't eat when you're sober, you suddenly feel like eating when you're drunk and that kind of stuff. So those were definitely the two main ones for me.
If you think back now that you've got a bit of sort of bird's eye view on the journey so far of your life, what moments or what reasons were you causing you to use food to get up to 120 kilos? Like why did it happen?
Well, I guess like over the course of the sort of nearly 2 years that I did my transformation, it was 18 months in the end, wasn't it? I mean, there was a lot of sort of unpicking over that period. And I think a lot of it was kind of realizing that I perhaps not dealt with certain emotional trauma that I'd experienced in my life from going way back. So, when I was 9 years old, I lost my brother to cancer. And that was obviously something that maybe I didn't really come to terms with until, I guess, my early to mid 20s, and various other things that happened in my life that I guess I saw a lot of things, I think, from an emotional trauma point of view that maybe a lot of people don't see so young in their life. And so I think I didn't necessarily deal with those things, and maybe that was one of the reasons why I would turn to food and sort of abusing my body and all that kind of stuff. And it can become quite a vicious cycle, I think, because I think when you're in that situation where you don't feel great about yourself, you feel less confident, and so you go less and less into your shell, and that can be quite difficult. And I think particularly for somebody like me who by personality is a bit of an extrovert, so on the outside is always somebody who's very happy and very sociable, and somebody who takes energy from being around people, that kind of stuff, but internally always feeling this disconnect with being very discontent. And I suppose I think to your question, over the course of the 18 months, it was working through some of those things as well, and I'm realizing that those things were affecting me as well, I guess.
When you were a teenager and you were going through, like you said, not many people experience that at such a young age. At what point did it start for you, like using devices and changing behaviors, or do you think it just sort of blended into one?
Yeah, I think it was just, the thing is I suppose you don't get to the weight that I was overnight. It's years and years and years of quite slow abuse, and it is abuse. I mean, like, people don't think of overeating as abuse, but it is abuse in some kind of way, like the way that people treat their bodies it is like that. And I think really for me it was like throughout teenage life, and then obviously 17, 18, going to university, you start drinking a lot more. Your nutrition is crap compared to what what I eat now compared to what I used to eat when I was at uni, in terms of no routine, no sort of schedule or anything like that. So I think all of those things just exacerbated it. And I think on top of that, naturally as well, when you're 18 and you start working, you start earning money, then you start spending money on going out, and you start eating meals out and socializing. So it's almost like it gathers momentum. We used to talk about gathered momentum with losing weight, but this is like gathered momentum in the wrong way, right?
It snowballs. Yeah.
It snowballs. Yeah, I think when you're like in a suboptimal sort of condition, it can snowball if you're not very careful. And without that guidance, I think it does snowball. So yeah, that was kind of where I got to.
What was your trigger moment to think, right, it's enough? Like I've gathered enough momentum here. I need to go the other way.
I think I have various moments of being really unhappy. It's like very slow progress and quite painful progress of just being constantly unhappy with how I felt and how I looked and all that kind of stuff. And I think really there was no real like specific trigger moment. It was more the fact that I suppose the trigger moment for me was actually finding your page, following your page, you then running the what was back then the first giveaway, and it was you did the pull-up. I think it was the pull-up challenge, wasn't it? And it was you'd been doing this step by step of how to get your first pull-up kind of thing. And I suppose if you were to say what was your trigger point for changing, that would have been really the point at which I kind of came in contact with RNT and started then obviously being on this path where we ended up where we ended up. But that was the point. And at that point, I obviously had no idea where it was going to end and kind of all that kind of stuff, which is great. So, but yeah, in terms of how I felt, it was a very slow process. It wasn't like, right, one day I looked in the mirror and I was like, God, I hate how I look kind of thing. I had many of those moments, unfortunately, but it's just things didn't change after that kind of thing.
How did you look when you looked in the mirror? And then what was it like? You said that you had the moment and then you wouldn't do anything about it. Because I think that's an interesting thing people experience, where they look at it, they feel they don't like it, and then that's it, they forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, like I suppose the best analogy I could give is, people wake up in the morning, and if they think about sticking to a plan, whatever plan they're on, whether it's just maintaining their weight, losing weight, or bulking, whatever, it's like, right, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z today, and then your focus and your control and your motivation is at its highest at the beginning of the day, but then by 8 p.m. you're in that danger zone where all of those things have fallen away and your body is just like, it's going back towards the vices sort of thing. So that was basically how I felt with how I looked. It was like, I'd have those moments where I felt, I felt disgusted with how I looked. I didn't like how I felt inside. I had very low confidence in myself. My body confidence was really, really low, all that kind of stuff. But equally, when the social situations came about where I was exposed to those triggers, it was much easier to just say yes to all of those things rather than deal with the fact that I didn't like how I felt, how I looked, or how I felt, and all that kind of stuff. So, and that's the thing, isn't it? Like when you say no the first few times, or when you think about saying no the first few times, that's a difficult point. But then once you've made that decision to change and you do set your mind to it, then it becomes a lot easier. But yeah, I guess we all try to put off the things that we know we need to do, in any space in our life. Like people, we have a tendency to do that. So
It's
yeah.
interesting you said you had no idea we'd end up where we ended up. When you entered that giveaway, what were you actually trying to achieve? What were you thinking you were going to win or try and accomplish if you did win?
Well, obviously I sort of knew that if I was to kind of to win that giveaway, then we'd get the 3 months coaching. But I had no idea what that 3 months coaching would look like, because obviously 3 months turned into 6 months, turned into 9 months, and okay, this is great, and then it just rolled and rolled and rolled, and then kind of we are where we are now, kind of thing. And it's just like so at that point it was just like really wanting to get this concept of like having a coach that actually got to know you, that actually started to understand who you are as a person, what triggered you, what you wanted to achieve, all that kind of stuff. I've never really had that kind of opportunity to work with anybody like that before, because trying to think, this was, what year was this? Like online 2017. So like obviously there were online coaching businesses at that time, but it was not to the level that it is now. Like, like everybody's an online coach now, right?
So I'm surprised you're not an online coach.
I could do, yeah. Everybody's an online coach, right?
Yeah,
so but back then it wasn't to that degree. But so yeah, I think I'd obviously followed you because you were doing prep at the time for your competitions and all that kind of stuff. And so I think just having the chance, like I suppose, to work with you and to get your guidance and stuff was really the thing that sort of motivated me to try and put myself in for that challenge and that kind of stuff.
And with the goal of
losing weight. But and obviously I think you sort of naively in your head think like, I want to get jacked, or I want to look like X, Y, and Z. But everybody's kind of endpoint is completely different. Our bodies are all very different. And obviously we did get there, and it was great. But I didn't know that actually it was going to take like 18 months. I was like, I'm going to get there in 3 months. Like it's going to be easy, but not easy. But it's 3 months I can do it in 3 months kind of thing. But it's a long process. So yeah.
And outside of losing the weight, what were you looking for internally?
Well, I thought when I started losing weight that I was looking for, I suppose I thought I was looking for wanting to look good, and that sort of external validation was what was going to make me feel good. But actually, as I started losing weight, what made me feel good, and I suppose even to this day, in terms of continuing to exercise, what makes me feel good is how it makes you feel to go to the gym, to have 4 sessions a week where you train like your life depends on it, and you focus and you progress, and the confidence that builds from being consistent, and how that makes you feel knowing that you've put in everything in the gym. That was the feeling that I absolutely loved and still love now. That was the thing that stuck with me. And so then when the focus kind of shifted to that, then the weight loss and the looking good, which is obviously important, like we're all human beings, but that became a byproduct of that something else. So that shift, it only happened when I started to lose weight and actually sticking to a plan, because obviously before that I'd never stuck to a plan that had been written for me for any given period of time. And then suddenly you stick to a plan for 10 weeks, you stick to a plan for 3 months, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And suddenly you do start to look very different. And I think maybe my mum took a picture of me where I was about to go to work at the pub, and I was wearing like a black shirt, and my mum took a picture of me standing next to my brother, and I was like, excuse my French, I was like, fuck, like I look different, man. Like, like I look really different. And I think I posted that photo on Instagram, and like everyone was like, Jesus Christ, like you look so different, blah, 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 blah. And the funny thing about that was like November. So we'd only been training together for like 2 months at that point. And that was 9 months before the end point. So it's crazy how quickly those changes can appear if you're consistent for a small amount of time. But then obviously you got to keep chasing the gold and seeing how far you can go with it,
And what about the RNT process helped you accomplish your goals?
Well, I think if you execute, it's very hard to fail, isn't it? That's what it comes down to. I mean, like all of this kind of stuff is execution. Like ultimately, I think if you're somebody who's coachable, if you're somebody who listens to your coach, understands that you've paid somebody for a reason, or that you've asked somebody to help you for a reason, then I very much in that situation just saw myself, and still now see myself as the student and always wanting to learn. And so I think if you do that, then Yeah, it's the best analogy, which I've heard many times before, is it's like the sat nav, right? The sat nav is there. You just got to drive the car, which is obviously sounds easier than it is. Like it sounds a lot easier than it is, but ultimately, the closer that you can get to executing that plan to the point, the better your results are going to be. And so, yeah, I mean, I obviously don't need to speak to what RNT does because the results are obvious. Like, the number of people that have now been through this process successfully, it's clear that there's, you've got it down to a T. So.
Your story is always one of my favorites, and when we first had that photo shoot, I still remember the feeling. I had like hair standing up when we were at your photo shoot because there's a couple of cool moments, especially when we held your trousers. Me and your brother held your trousers up.
Yeah.
And you were just smiling, and you could just see like sheer joy in you. And I remember my dad always says to me, he's like, there's going to be few stories that are going to beat Krishan's one because there's just something about it. And it's not surprising that firstly we're still talking here 6 years later, and secondly the whole physical is the vehicle mantra mission came real crystallized a few months after. Yeah, because I realized then I was like, oh shit, this is not about the physical anymore. Like, yes, he's lost a lot of weight, but this is now gone to the next level, and that's why I wanted to include you at the end of the book. That final bit of around confidence, and that's why it's really special. Like even in the 6 years. The week of the 6th year anniversary, we get to speak about this because I still look back and think, wow, that was the moment where I realized this is more than just the physical because of how impactful it was. And if you don't mind me sharing the screen, I could share that picture.
Of course.
This one here, this picture here is one of my favorite pictures.
Your brother looks so young in that photo now.
Your brother's there, just got that. We all
look so much younger. Yeah,
that's me trying to grow a beard out.
It's just funny because obviously, like, when sort of at the end of that process, when we did decide to do because the photo shoot for me, I never thought that I would end up doing that kind of thing. But then when we got to the end of that process, it was kind of like, well, like, how could you not kind of thing? Because, it's so much weight that you've lost kind of thing. And, like, I'd obviously been looking at, by that point, quite a few of your clients had obviously done photo shoots and whatever. And I was just kind of having ideas of what I could do. And then really I had to think back to when I was working in retail when I was 17, and my first retail job at the age of 17, where I had to go buy a suit, and walking into the shops, and it was Debenhams back in the day now, but not being able to find any trousers that fitted me, and the only trousers that I could buy were these 42-inch trousers. And I don't know why I just had this idea when I was thinking about what I could do for the photo shoot. And I was like, yeah, that was really embarrassing. And I was like, I wonder what those 42-inch trousers look like now. And, like, that was, with you guys holding it on the side, it's crazy. Because I think my waistline at that point when we shot was like, it was like 28 inches. It's crazy. It's like, crazy difference between the two fits.
Your brother could have been standing inside of those trousers with you.
My brother could have been standing inside those things. Yeah, well, not so much now because he's big. He started training himself and stuff. So like.
Oh wow! So yeah, of course he must be like. Well, he's 5 years older since that picture.
Well, this is like a whole thing that we haven't even spoken about. But so my brother's now 17, and my brother is obsessed with training. Like,
no way.
Yeah. Oh man,
you not told me that.
Yeah, I haven't told you about that. Yeah, because obviously we haven't caught up properly for a while. But yeah, my brother is obsessed with training, man. I mean, I wrote him a program 6 months ago, and yeah, the kid's just like at it. Like, like he's getting up before school, 6 a.m., getting into the gym, getting his 1 hour training done, going to school. Like, he's coming home, he's doing his meal prep, he's getting his breakfast ready before he goes to bed, all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, wow, like if you're doing that at 17, then give it a few years, you're going to be looking and feeling really good. And he loves it. And he says the same thing. It's like, now that I've started doing it, I just love the feeling. Like, I love how it makes my day feel. I love how it makes me feel, kind of thing. So yeah, I suppose
does he still remember like your journey?
Sorry. Does he remember the photo shoot or pre-photo shoot?
Just that whole experience that you went through. Does he talk about
it? Yeah. I think he still remembers it because he was young, but it's not like super young. It's just that he's obviously a teenager now, so he's grown like a lot. So but yeah, it's funny. Yeah, back then he would have fit in the trousers for sure.
Let's talk about since the photo shoot, because we're talking 5 years later. still in good shape. You found your sort of lifestyle solution. How's that process been of finding a sustainable place for you to be, where you still feel good? At the pool. I've seen some pictures of you still, at the Ibiza pool parties, looking confident, feeling good.
Yeah.
How's that process been? Because I think as hard as it is to get the weight off, it's even harder to keep it off, right? So talk us through that process.
I think, like as with a lot of things in life, it's trial and error, isn't it? And the thing is like your lifestyle dictates a lot of this kind of stuff. And so when we did that initial big transformation, looking back on it now, in some ways the environment was easy and it was perfect because I was a student. I didn't have a lot of money, but I was very time rich, and I could dictate what my day looked like. I knew when I was going to eat, when I was going to meal prep, when I was going to train, when I was going to sleep, all that kind of stuff. And now I'm working a super busy job. Like, I've got a relationship, I'm living away from home, so I'm constantly trying to manage all these different types of priorities. And so it's just trial and error. But what it comes back to is that I suppose during that foundational period with RNT was that I've got that education and that knowledge, and that means that I've got control over how I do things and how I run my life in terms of picking my priorities, knowing when I need to push, when to pull, all that kind of stuff. So it's just managing all of that. And life's busy, right? So you just got to pick your priorities and like what matters to you. And I think the one thing that you can't escape from is that you can't expect to go from having no structure and routine and no kind of set plan in terms of what you eat and how you train and all that kind of stuff, to then being very structured when you do your transformation. And then you can't expect to go back to what you were like before and have the same results and look and feel the same. Like, you will very quickly just go back to how you looked before if you're not careful. And I think, to be honest, that's probably where most people go wrong, because they see like this transformation or whatever it is that they do as a means to an end, and they're like, okay, and then I get my life back. But obviously that life that you had before then was what got you to where you were in the first place. So it's just being honest and recognizing that and being like, well, like, yeah, what do I want and what actually matters to me. And like, I don't need to be jacked, as in I don't need to be ripped all year round to be happy, because that's just not my definition of happiness. But I do want to feel, when I look in the mirror, that I actually look to some degree like the effort that I put in at the gym, and that gives me confidence and that makes me feel good. So that's kind of like my minimum standard. And then there are times where I will push and pull beyond that, and that's what it is.
Do you at what point did you realize there was no way you were ever going back?
When I started training with RNT, probably about 3 months in. Yeah, yeah, you just can't. I mean, it's a lot of behavioral stuff, isn't it? And once you ingrain certain behaviors into your body, you don't want to go back to how you were before. So yeah, I think, and obviously with all this kind of stuff, I did it at a time in my life where I was just about to start traveling, and I was just about to start my career and kind of dating and all that kind of stuff. And the results were obvious, which was that when I was looking after myself, all of those things were moving in a certain direction, which was up. There was no doubt about it. Like, everything was moving in the right direction. So, again, it's evidence-based, right? Like, you can look at your life and be like, well, look, it's pretty obvious that this is a change in my life for the positive in more than one way. So I can't go back to how I was before, kind of thing.
Amazing. If someone's watching this either live or on replay, what's one reason they should enter the giveaway today or this weekend? And if they're listening to this after the weekend, why should they start their fitness journey or transformation journey?
Well, I would just say, what is stopping you? Because I think if you're at this point now where you're interested in getting involved, something has led you to this point, and you've got to ask yourself, I guess, whether it's more painful to stay where you are, or to be a little bit uncomfortable, to try something you don't know, to put yourself out there, with a giveaway or whatever it is, and just like give yourself an opportunity to do something that will. The thing is, like, people talk about, it will transform your life, it will change your life. It will happen very slowly, and then you'll look back and be like, wow, yeah, my life has changed, kind of thing. It's not like, right, I win the competition and boom, life's changed. You still got to put in the work. Like, this is like a ticket to put in the work, I think that's how people should see it. But if you're willing to put in the work and you want to change, then you're not really going to get a better opportunity to do it. I don't personally think, from personal experience looking back, it is a very unique opportunity. So to take it with both hands, I'd say.
Amazing. What would you say to the young Krishan right now?
Just be honest and just think about what actually matters to you, and if you're uncomfortable, then do something about it. Don't just hide behind comfort or excuses or whatever it is. Just be empowered to do something about it, because that's the thing. Like, as soon as you realize that it's all in your hands, then suddenly you're empowered. You're not a victim anymore of the situation, and that's massive, I think.
Amazing. What are you most excited about in life right now?
Everything, man, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, just traveling more, pushing forward with work, training 4 times a week, like that gives me so much joy. I feel blessed. I'm in a good place right now, and that gives me some sort of short, medium, long-term happiness, I think, which is good.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for your time and for going live here with the Transformation Accelerator Group. Really appreciate it. And like I said before, it's cool. Every time when I reflect on like the RNT journey so far, your story is always one that's close to my heart. That 2019 picture of us with the little certificate, put that up yesterday on Instagram stories. Again, how young we look in there, but it's been a fun and crazy ride.
Yeah, it's almost, in a way, it's like nostalgic or emotional looking back, because it feels like a different era. But yeah, of course, I'll never forget it, and I'll never forget the help that you gave me as my coach as well. So yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Amazing.